there are a lot of people getting shafted that shouldn't have been shafted.
Right.
There are a lot of people being indicted for crimes they hadn't committed. And there was a lot. I didn't realize how corrupt the society was until I became an attorney.
Luxury Productions presents Survival of the Fittest podcast, a product for the people, by the people, where dreams go further than bullets. With your hosts, Lucky XL and Mons Logan. Let's go. Yeah.
Top of the morning, it's your boy Monzy Baby Mons Logan, and this is Survival of the Fittest podcast. Now, today's guest is somebody you definitely need to know. With over 27 years of experience in business litigation, personal injury, criminal defense, and civil rights law. A member of the illustrious Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and Chicago Defenders 2022 Man of Excellence honoree. Every day he's hustling. And I ain't talking about Rick Ross. I'm talking about my good brother, attorney Darryl E. Robinson. How you doing today, brother?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks for that introduction. Really appreciate being here. Want to share a lot of the information and knowledge that I have with the audience in terms of that. I have a lot. I'm sure we're going to focus on certain areas, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, yeah. We've been waiting for this moment for a while, man. Now, I want to start off, I'll go to your website, and I see everything, and I caught a picture, and it's you sitting at your desk with the desk plate, and it says, "Every day I'm hustling."
Absolutely. I like to define myself through hard work. I don't necessarily believe that the person who is the smartest is going to be the most successful. In this society, you got to work hard. And so anything that you really want, you can get, but you got to work hard to do it. And so you can't complain about not having anything or having accomplished anything in life if you haven't given your all. Right. Every day you're not hustling in terms of that. And that's how I've approached life over the years, even before I became a lawyer as an engineer. Every day I was hustling.
So who instilled that in you?
Well, one thing is it starts with a work ethic. I believe that in order to be able to do things consistently, you have to start beginning doing those things. And so I grew up, I am born in the last year of the baby boomers. So my father's still alive, thankfully, is a part of the previous generation, in which when we grew up, unlike a lot of the young folk today, we had a lot of chores to do. And so we had certain chores we had to do every day or every weekend before we can go outside and play.
Right.
So you do that growing up, you develop a work ethic of doing chores. And then from chores, I end up becoming a track and field athlete. Back in the day, in high school, track and field was a big thing. And so the coaches have been around a long time. They work you really hard. And so if you want to be good at the sport or any particular race that you want to get into, you had to work hard. So that created the work ethic that I needed in terms of that. And so when I went to college, I kind of carried that work ethic on and followed me through college into work, employment, into entrepreneurship in terms of that. And so that's where I got it from. And it built upon itself. And once it becomes a habit, you know nothing else but hard work. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
So walk me through that. What was life like coming up for you?
Well, I was born on the west side, K-Town.
Okay.
Anybody understand K-Town with all the streets start with K? We were on Kenneth Street, right?
Okay.
So my father owned a 2-flat over there. And then he moved over to Ashburn, Gresham area. And so raised most of my life in the Ashburn, Gresham area. Went to Claire Barton Elementary School. From there, went to Chicago Vocational. I'm a Cavalier.
Okay.
So, yeah, I graduated with some great Cavaliers. I went a year early. I made a double from 5th to 7th grade when I was in elementary school.
You was a smart kid, huh?
Yeah. The hard-working kid, I would say.
Right.
And so my sister didn't get a big kick out of that because I ended up in her class.
Right.
And so we finished elementary school together and then went to high school together, Chicago Vocational. While there, I got involved in track and field. I was captain of the team for 3 years. And All-State. Went down state 4 years in a row. All-State my senior year. And DePaul noticed me.
Right.
DePaul University. And I had never intended on going to DePaul. Never even thought about a Catholic school. They asked me, to come tour the campus and so forth. So DePaul recruited me. I ended up going to DePaul, which was a blessing at DePaul, but it was a culture shock when I got there. Right. So as far as that is concerned, and we got to DePaul, it was mostly, Catholic white university, not many of us around. in terms of that. And but they looked out for the student athletes. There was some support there as far as that is concerned. And as a freshman is when I ended up pledging Alpha Phi Alpha. Alpha was founded on DePaul University campus the fall of 1981. That's when I went there. And I didn't know anything about fraternities or anything. And so I got an introduction to in the spring of 82 when they had the spring line. And that's when I ended up pledging. I was only 17 years old.
Man.
Yeah, I was only
When you pledged, you were 17?
I was 17 when I pledged. I didn't know what I was getting into.
Did they give you a pledge name?
No, I didn't have a pledge name. No, they didn't give me a pledge name. So by the time I found out about one of the things I really weren't interested in fraternities because I thought that they would be wasting my time as far as interfering with what it is that I plan on doing in life.
Right.
Full-time athlete, and I was a student, and my intentions was to go into engineering at the time as far as that is concerned. But I was roaming the halls one day in the dorm I was in, and there were not many African-Americans there. And I ended up in my teammates' room. Two of them were teammates at the time. They were upperclassmen. And there was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha in there who was saying they had an upcoming line. And so he was talking to them about the fraternity. And what stuck with me was members of the fraternity. He started shouting out Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Jesse Owens. And so I was like, this must be, something to it if these individuals were associated with the fraternity at what point in time in their life.
Right.
And so I said, well, we'll look into it. So from the time of that introduction to the time I had an interview, they had interviews downtown, and the time I was online was like 3 weeks. And when I got online, I was like, what in the world I got myself into? Because pledging then is not like it is today.
Pretty tough back then.
Yeah, it was rough back then, man. I'm telling you, it was rough. And so it was an interesting experience. But once I got on, I wasn't quitting. I wasn't, that was part of the work ethic.
Right.
You can make it, I can make it. That's how I looked at it. So
let me ask you this. Was it beneficial? Has it served you?
Very beneficial. One of the best things that I've ever done was become a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. Because prior to me going to college, in terms of that, I never got an opportunity to meet individuals who were part of the middle and upper class African-American community. DePaul being a white school, some of those members of the community went to that school. That's how they got in. That's how they paid for it. That's the money in terms of that. So I got an opportunity to meet. In fact, the president of the chapter, who's also a lawyer today, his father was a judge. Black judge at the time, and they got a chance to meet him and introduce to individuals, and they all weren't even from the Chicago area in terms of that, but also instilled in the ideas and principles of what the fraternity stand for and far as that are concerned, which was academic excellence, brotherhood, and helping each other out in terms of that. And then over the years, I'll give you a story that weighed heavily in terms of my career. So when I got to DePaul, I was either going to major in engineering or computer science. So while I was there, I decided to go in engineering. But DePaul didn't have a core engineering program. They had what was called a pre-engineering program. It was a 3+2. So you do 3 years and 2 years at another school. So after 3 years, I decided, my track career wasn't really going anywhere. I got badly injured my freshman year. So I decided I was going to engineering, chemical engineering, because I was interested in chemical engineering. So I ended up applying to the University of Detroit because I wanted to go to another city. I was trying to choose between two, was University of Detroit and Iowa State. And the reason I looked at Iowa State because my brother Al played football for Iowa State at that time.
Yeah, he did play for Iowa State.
Yeah, he played football at Iowa State. So, but I talked to him about Iowa State, and Iowa State had at the time, 25,000 students, another 25,000, only 500 were African-American. I was like, nah, I'm gonna go on up to Detroit. So in my usual practice, once it was time for me to go up to Detroit, I went up there in the winter of 1985, right? So I flew on Southwest, everything I had, my bags, I flew on Southwest, took the last flight out, Southwest, landed in Detroit Sunday night, and took the cab from the airport to the campus. And as we were going down the large freeway, I was like, man, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe
second thoughts creep in.
I had second thoughts, man. I said, man, maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Then I got to the campus, right? I was in a dorm called Reno Hall. And so I don't know what I was thinking. It was about 10 o'clock at night. So I couldn't get in the dorm. So I had to wait. Somebody came out the door. So I ended up getting in. And when I walked in the lobby, there was a sister sitting in a chair in the lobby, right? Like the hall administrator, right? Light skin, red hair sister. She said, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm getting here. I'm trying to check into the dorm. Right. She was like, Negro, it's 10 o'clock at night. She said, the housing department is not open. Right. So I was like, well, okay. They had off to the right, they had a lobby area where they had a TV. I said, well, I'm going to sleep over there until it opens at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And so, so it was wintertime, right? I had my jacket on, like black leather jacket. And under my jacket, I had a sweat shirt on with A5A on it.
Right.
But it was zipped up. So when she told me this, so I went down to pick up my bags. I unzipped my jacket. She said, wait a minute. Are you an alpha?
Right.
I said, yeah, why? She said, I'm an alpha angel.
Oh, wow.
I said, oh, okay, cool. She said, don't go nowhere. Wait right there. So she went to the phone, called this guy
Right.
who came downstairs. He was a head resident advisor for that particular dorm. Not only was he a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, he was from Chicago.
Oh, wow.
So automatically, he said, look, I got you. Went over
Right.
to the housing department, opened, got the keys, took me in, got me a new mattress in my room and the whole 9 yards. The head director of the housing department was an alpha. So I got a chance to meet all the brothers on campus at the time. I didn't even know back then we didn't have social media. I
Right.
didn't know they had an alpha chapter on the campus. Didn't even check. And so got introduced to the brothers. Most of the brothers, that's a big international school. So a lot of the brothers were from New York, New Jersey, other parts of Michigan. So I got a chance to meet another one from the islands, Dominican Republic and so forth. So I got a chance to experience that. And Detroit was different than Chicago. Back then, the city was ran by all black people. The mayor, Coleman Young was the mayor. It was ran by all black people. So I got a chance to learn a lot about, and so the fraternity really helped me in terms of that. Every time I needed a break, in terms of that, there was always a brother there to lend a hand as far as that is concerned. And so I passed it forward, and I helped, that chapter was dying. So I put forth an effort to create what we had done at DePaul. So I got people interested, and I got the brothers involved in what we call Greek Week.
Right.
In terms of that. And so African-American men on campus became interested, and the chapter really, really grew, and we did a lot of things. We had the first African-American awards banquet where we gave an award to the African-American students. We had the first Black Supreme Court justice from Michigan come down to speak in terms of that. He's a lawyer, and I'm still cool with him today.
So
a lot of
on
networking.
that, when did you take that shift from chemical engineering to law?
Well, what happened was this. So I ended up going to school in engineering, and I worked in the automotive industry for 5 years in terms of that. And I like working with cars. I was in the automotive industry for 5 years, but I'd always intended, and while I was working as an engineer, I got an MBA part-time, right? So, I always intended on getting 3 degrees. But at the time I finished the MBA, I was torn between getting a PhD in finance and a JD. My intentions was to use that education and experience the further my career in corporate America. I had never intended on practicing law.
Right.
That was not my intent. But when I talked to my finance professors in MBA school, and they recommend I talk to lawyers, if you're going to move further in corporate America, like in leadership positions, they didn't recommend the PhD in finance because they only recommended if you were interested in teaching or doing research. And I was interested in neither.
Right.
They say you should get the JD because as a leader, you should understand the risk associated in terms of that with a product. And that made sense. So, okay, I applied to law school, went to law school, and that's how I ended up going to Loyola back here. Loyola gave me a lot of money, and I ended up coming back. I didn't want to come back to Chicago. I want to go to Texas. I applied to University of Texas. I want to go to Texas. At Loyola was the last school I applied to, and the first one accepted me. I got the letter, threw it in the garbage. Literally.
You really didn't want to go.
Yeah, I didn't really want to come back to Chicago. I like
Right.
Chicago, but I didn't really want to come back to Chicago. Threw it in the garbage in terms of that. And I'll tell you how I ended up at Loyola. So one night I came home late, about 8 o'clock. There was somebody left a voicemail. It was the dean of admissions for Loyola. She said, Detroit's an hour ahead. So she called me around 8. It was 7 o'clock her time. She said, hey, I'm in my office. I'm not leaving until you call me back.
Right.
That's what she said. And she said, I got some good news for you. So I called her, right? And she said, Mr. Robinson, I just want to let you know that out of the people applying for the class, you are going to be the Digital Minority Recipient Award winner. You're going to get a full scholarship the first year and a half scholarship the second, third year of law school. I was like, wow, okay, in terms of that. And so she said, if you're going to accept it, let me know. Think about it. So I thought about it, and I discussed it with my mom. And I had already been away for 9 years now, mind you. My mom didn't want me to go to Texas. She wanted me to come back here to Chicago.
Of course.
And so she was saying, look, if you come back here to Chicago, you can stay at home, you can go to school. And so I started putting 2 plus 2 together, and the costs of saving with the scholarship and the free housing made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I'm going back to Chicago. So that's how I got back here. And this has been a blessing. A lot of the people I met when I got back here, as far as that are concerned, the individuals. And so I went to law school. I graduated from law school, and I met a couple of individuals in law school. One was Theodore London. You may have seen him on the radio and the TV.
Right.
He does a lot of estate planning. I was Theodore's upper class mentor. So when you go in Loyola, Black Law Student Association assigns you a mentor, an upper class mentor. I was the second year. He was the first year. He came in as a mentor. When I came in, there was another gentleman there, but he was a part-time student, Roger Best. Part-time students do 4 years. Full-time students do 3.
Right.
In terms of that. So me and Ted had birthed the idea of starting a law firm when we got out of law school. We brought Roger in later. And so Roger and myself had graduated in 96. Ted came out in 97. When Ted got his license, we started a law practice, and we decided to put it in Hyde Park. I'd never actually been to Hyde Park before in my life.
Really?
No, I hadn't. Ted grew up to Kenwood, so he grew up. He
Right.
He was familiar with the
He was
area
familiar with the
already.
area. Yeah, exactly. Roger was from Cleveland. So, so I said, okay, he put the office open in Hyde Park. We went to Hyde Park. We started an office. And this was an office that hadn't been used in 3 years. So we went into it, needed a lot of work. We poured our own money into doing the rehab and the office and the whole 9 yards. And we started a practice, and we were together for 3 years as far as that concerned. And then we decided to part and go separate ways. Roger and myself stayed in the office, although we weren't partners. And then a gentleman named John Light, he's a judge today.
Right.
He was a prosecutor at the time. He was leaving the prosecuting office, and he wanted to take that third office in terms of that. When John came in, me and him started partnering up. Back in those days, we did a lot of civil rights cases, police brutality cases, long before police brutality cases became popular. So the trend in police brutality cases does not surprise me, and neither the evidence.
Because I read your first case
Yeah.
was a civil rights case,
Yeah,
right?
my very first case was a civil rights case. That's how I got to practicing law, right? So I was representing a young lady that I had met who was a nurse at Cook County Hospital, and she had gotten into a little beef with one of her fellow coworkers. Fellow coworkers was non-African American, wouldn't made complaints about that she threatened her on the elevator.
Right.
So at the time, Cook County had Cook County Hospital Police. They got rid of that group because they were corrupt, just like a lot of other groups over there, right? The SWAT team, all of them got. And so they falsely arrested her.
Right.
We sued them in federal court. And so I had no experience at all. Filed this lawsuit in federal court. Let's just show you how God works. And the case landed in front of a black judge.
Oh,
Wow.
my.
It was a blessing.
Yeah.
Was he an alpha?
No, he wasn't.
Because everybody needs that.
It landed in front of a black judge, right? So he's retired now, and he helped me out a lot as far as that is concerned. And so we litigated this case and got ready for trial, right? And so he knew I wasn't ready to do this trial, but he forced the state's attorney to put money on the table. We ended up settling that case. We sure did, as far as that is concerned. So that was my very first experience. And then that's kind of when I got the bug, right? And so I said, I'm going to try these in terms of that. And so then we started doing bigger and bigger cases as far as that is concerned. So and back then I did a lot more criminal work and civil rights work as far as that is concerned. I don't do much criminal anymore. I do a little bit here and there if somebody wants to bring me on board or if the price is right.
So what do you specialize in now?
Well, okay. As a result of the pandemic, I tried to rebrand myself. It's one of those things. Like a lot of people, I said, well, I want to focus on small business because where I see the movement to, and thanks to the Millennium and the Z generation, I see the movement to is more entrepreneurship because the Millennium and the Z generation don't want to work in the traditional corporate arena in terms of that. They want to experience what we call the real essence of work-life balance. See, back when I came up, they talked work-life balance, but behind closed doors, they frowned upon you, right? And so it was hard for women to have families and get promoted. It was hard for people to take 2 weeks off vacation. Oh, that was frowned on. So the push came from the younger generation in terms of that. And I hear from people in my generation who are interviewing young folks, they'll come in and say, hey, I want $50,000, $150,000 a week. And by the way, I only want to work 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
So that's the movement that's going on.
Yeah. They know they could come in as an independent consultant and make 3 times the money that they're going to pay that salary employee.
That's right. And that's what's going on. And so a lot of people are doing an entrepreneur route. And so what I wanted to do was, because I'm very experienced in doing all kind of transactional work, not just in the entertainment industry, for small business, for major multi-million-dollar business, settlements and stuff like that. So I wanted to cater myself to small businesses because small business needs an array of services, not just transactional work, but litigation. They get sued all the time.
Right.
For a variety of reasons. You'd be surprised. They get sued from breach of contract from business to business. They get sued or what they call EEOC or Illinois Department of Human Rights charges because I've represented individuals and I've also represented businesses in that arena as far as that are concerned. they get sued by administrative agencies. For example, you have restaurants that pay sales taxes. If they don't pay their taxes, guess what? The government coming after them.
Right.
So I represent them in those arenas in terms of that. So I wanted to rebrand myself to target more of those individuals because businesses, I think, in my opinion, too, have a better position to be able to pay the fees you want as far as that are concerned. Back when I was a young attorney, I took a lot of stuff for cheap, just to learn the experience. And I think that's important.
No, it is.
I think that's important to do it. Like, for example, in criminal cases, I've done anything from traffic cases to attempt murders. I've never done a murder, ironically, though. Not that I didn't try, but people weren't willing to pay the price.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of money for a murder.
Right, in terms of that. But so from a criminal arena, I've rapes, all that kind of stuff. Even federal cases.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of federal fraud, white-collar stuff.
So what is litigation for the people who don't know?
Litigation, can come in different fashions. But in civil litigation is when you have a plaintiff and a defendant, right? And the plaintiff typically files a lawsuit in a certain arena. But let's say, for example, a personal injury case.
Right.
They file a lawsuit for claiming that the defendant is a but-for cause of their injuries. Let's say an accident. A person runs a red light and hits you, injures you severely, or kills you in terms of you file. So civil litigation involves, the difference between civil and criminal, civil litigation involves a lot of discovery, written and oral discovery up front. So you turn over documents such as medical records, police reports, witness statements, but you also get an opportunity to depose the defense, the defendant, the plaintiff, any witnesses, any what we call F2 experts, which are treating physicians, primary care physicians. Because, for example, the path is if I get hit in an accident and I get taken to the emergency room, so the emergency doctor is going to get deposed, emergency record's going to come up, but then he's going to say, follow up with your primary care physician. I'm going to go to my primary care physician and I'm going to get treated. He's going to diagnose me. He's going to say, hey, well, look, you got a torn this and you got a torn that. You need to get treated. I'm going to send you to a specialist. You got a torn radial cup. I'm going to send you to an orthopedic surgeon. He's going to evaluate you. And the first thing he's going to do, depending on the level of your injury, is going to say, well, I'm going to have you take physical therapy first. So now you got a physical therapist that got to depose. And if that doesn't work, you come back and have surgery, then the orthopedic surgeon, he gets deposed. And the records, that's the difference. In a criminal case, it's just a matter of turning over records. You don't get a chance to talk to anybody, unless you're looking for witnesses. You send a private investigator, say, I need to find out if there's any witnesses to the scene. So I'm going to send them out there to talk to them and have them sign statements in terms of that. But the prosecution don't get a chance to depose them prior to trial. You just got to have your ducks lined up, and it flies the way it flies at criminal trials, right?
So speaking on that, you spoke on like hiring a private investigator.
Right.
So that's something that come as part of the attorney's fee for fighting a particular case? How does that work?
The client has to pay the cost of a private investigator. You don't always need it, but they have to pay the cost of a private investigator. No different than they would have to pay the cost in a civil case of an expert. You may need an expert in a case, depending on the type of case it is. A medical expert. I've had cases where you need the accident reconstruction expert. I had a case once where you all know about housing court. And so if you get on a demolition order, demolition judgment against you, then the court can issue a demolition order. So they'll give you time to repair the building if you want to, but if you don't repair it, then it's going to be demolished by a time certain.
Right. I
had a case once where the city went and demolished it before the order expired. Well, got you now.
Yeah.
So once you do that, they're liable for it in terms of that. But you're going to need an expert to determine what the value of the property was in terms of that. You got to use an appraiser. Real estate agent won't work in that particular case. So in those type of things in terms of that. So you can use experts and all. I'm working on a case now involving two guys that got cannabis license. They were partners from state of Illinois. Now they're in a dispute. And so.
With each other?
With each other. Right. So that portion of the business got to be sold. Well, how much is it worth? Only an expert can tell you that.
An expert pot smoker? Bring me in. Hey, man. Let's record a million.
No, it's expert in evaluating. Well, most of the experts experience these days, because cannabis business in Illinois are new, and in most of the country they're new.
Right.
But these experts have been practicing evaluating all types of business, and some of them now have started to evaluate cannabis business because, as anything goes, you're going to eventually have a dispute among parties.
Right.
It's big money.
Absolutely.
In it. Oh, it is real big money in it. So. Yeah. You got to hire an expert to do that kind of stuff. So it's one of those deals.
So doubling back to you speaking on helping small businesses.
Right.
So I'm a beginning entrepreneur. I'm starting a business. I understand the industry that I'm in, but I don't understand the moving parts. At what point should I speak to an attorney?
You should get an attorney from the very beginning.
Mm.
You should get an attorney to make sure that your business is incorporated properly.
Right.
you should get an attorney to make sure that before you sign any type of contract, regardless of what type of contracts they are, with anybody that your attorney looks at it. I'm representing now another client that has a business. They're starting to franchise their business. So they have franchise agreements. So with franchise agreements, they can be real tricky because, you're talking about franchising in various states and so forth like that. So you want to get an attorney before you get into the franchise game when you have a business because, there's potential liability associated with that in terms of that. And you got to be careful who's going to be a franchisee. Right. You don't want everybody out there selling your brand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They selling fried chicken. You selling lobster in your brand.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the complaints about Harold's Chicken is that it doesn't have a consistent taste.
Right.
When you go from one
to the other. West side to the south side.
Exactly.
Different.
Right.
They use real mild sauces, ketchup and hot sauce.
Exactly. So, I mean, but the whole concept of being a franchise is consistency.
Right.
I mean, because you selling a quality product, you don't want a franchisee taking shortcuts, degrading your brand.
Right.
Exactly. That's important.
So why not defense or prosecution attorney?
Well, this is a good story about prosecution. Let's go with that one first, right?
Okay.
So between my second and third year in law school, I was an intern at the state's attorney's office, actually. But I was in the civil division because I was always interested in civil law, right? I was in the civil division. So I did intern in the civil division. And so part of the process in getting hired, you had to get fingerprinted. So they sent me down to 26th in California to get fingerprinted.
Right.
So I was down in the fingerprint room at 26th California, waiting around to get called. And I start walking around. And I noticed in the hallway of this office that there was a wall. They call it the gang wall.
The gang wall.
They call it the gang wall. And on the gang wall, they were either black or Hispanics. I said, ain't no white guys on the gang wall?
No greasers?
Right, exactly. On the gang wall. I was like, wait a minute. And so I said, so is this selective prosecution? That's how I looked at it. Is this selective prosecution, right? You can't tell me no white gangs out there. Or gang wannabe members. I mean, it's got to be, right? And so that stayed with me, right? So I went on ahead and got my fingerprint. I worked in the state's attorney's office for that summer. And upon graduation, I interviewed with the state's attorney's office. One of the interviews was Andrea Zott. Remember Andrea Zott? She's the head of the Urban League at one time, remember? She was Rahm Emanuel's deputy mayor. He was to create that first idea of deputy mayor. Look up, So Andrea Zott was one of the interviewers, and another guy I can't think of. He was a judge. He just retired. And one of the questions that they asked me is, would you mind working in the criminal division? I was like, no, I'm not working in the criminal division. And so I didn't get the job because in the civil division, they require attorneys with experience. Criminal divisions will take you when you knew.
Right.
And so I wouldn't work in the criminal division as far as that is concerned. Interviewed for 2 state's attorneys jobs at that time. One of them was at the Milwaukee State's Attorney, the county in that area. And one of the things they asked me was not I believe in the death penalty because they don't have a death penalty in Wisconsin. Illinois did at the time, Wisconsin did in terms of that. And so I didn't get that one, but maybe they didn't like my answer. So
what was the answer? We want to know.
You put it out there now.
I said, well, it depends. That's what I told him. It depends. I said, I don't think everybody who commits a murder should get the death penalty. I think in extreme circumstances, and I named certain individuals. One of them was the guy that was in jail up in Wisconsin. The one that was killed, there was John Wayne Gacy, and the guy that was in Wisconsin. You remember the guy that was
not Dahmer.
Dahmer.
Oh,
yeah. In those 2 cases.
He was in Wisconsin?
I thought it was.
Yeah, I think it was Wisconsin.
He was in Wisconsin. Yeah, he was in Milwaukee.
Oh,
he was in Milwaukee. Yeah.
It was one of his victims.
Yeah, exactly. So in those cases, when there are serial killers and people who commit real heinous type of multiple murders, then I think it has to be considered as far as that concern. Fundamentally, no, I don't believe in it from a Christian standpoint.
Right.
I try to explain to him. I said, but in application, those are the only circumstances where I would see it warranted. So it's one of those deals. And so that's how that went. So that's why I never got into the prosecution side. I got on the defense side, and I was glad I did. And the reason I was glad I did, because one thing I noticed early on in my career is that there are a lot of people getting shafted that shouldn't have been shafted. Right. There are a lot of people being indicted for crimes they hadn't committed. And there was a lot, I didn't realize how corrupt the society was until I became an attorney.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
For example, I'm going to tell you how in civil rights cases, when we were doing civil rights cases, Now, the evidence in civil rights cases back in the day when me and John Like were doing them were just testimonies from fellow gang members. They didn't have videos then. So your witnesses were fellow gang members.
Right.
And so what happened was is you would have cops would take advantage of the fact that the credibility of the witness would be very low because the jury would be prejudiced against them because of their record and anything else. So they would go and rob these guys.
Right.
They would take their money, take their drugs.
The police would.
The police would do that. Right. In terms of that. And so one of our clients, we had a wrongful death case. One of our clients was on the street selling drugs over here in this area. And so narcotic officers were driving one way down the wrong way street and attempted to try to find him.
Right.
These guys are in jail too, federal prison now. These cops were.
Cops. Okay.
Yeah, after the fact, they got caught.
Right.
And I think our case helped put the feds onto them. But anyway, during their deposition, they testified they were driving the wrong way fast down the wrong way street because they're trying to break up a dice game. I said, well, why would narcotics officers drive one way down that fast to break up a dice game on the corner? That's a misdemeanor.
Right.
And so what ended up happening with our client is our client saw him came down the street. He ended up running. They caught him and he swallowed the drugs.
Right.
They were cocaine at the time. And so they burst in his stomach. Right. But there were witnesses. But under the law, for example, once a suspect is in the custody of the police officers and the police becomes aware that suspect is in need of medical condition, they're required by the law to get it. The officer said, I hope you die. And people heard them.
It was witnesses.
It was witnesses because it was at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Right.
On a summer day.
Driving down the wrong way street trying to break up a dice.
Not like you're not going to bring attention driving down the wrong way street at 3:30 in the afternoon because back in those days, everybody played outside.
Right.
And so we filed that lawsuit and...
Did he die?
Yeah, he died. And so we filed that lawsuit. We ended up settling ultimately, but when we filed that lawsuit, by the time we got to depose some of the witnesses, they were locked up in Cook County Jail, right?
Right.
This was funny too. And so we would have to go down to the jail to do their depositions, right? So I'm down there. And you ever been in, you guys have never been in Cook County Jail. You go in there, doors locked behind you.
Right.
Number of doors. You go all the way in the back.
And all the doors keep locking back.
I mean, gates. I'm in steel doors.
Right.
And so in terms of that, but I'm feeling okay. I'm comfortable. Some of the cats I recognize, they're from the hood, right? What's up,
Yeah.
In terms of that. But the city attorneys, man, they were shaking in their boot. They had never been in that kind of environment. Yeah. And they were saying, well, I don't understand you feel so comfortable in. And I said, well, these are guys, this is the community I grew up in.
Right.
And so we go back there and we do a deposition. And one time we were doing a deposition, y'all not gonna believe, and the lights went out. Completely. The lights went out.
In the county?
In the county. Completely the lights went out. Right, exactly. So you can imagine how spooked some of them was.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. And at that time, they had guys loose in the hallway because, they had people doing cleaning details.
Right.
Yes. And so that's the kind of stuff that would go on back there as far as I'm concerned. Criminal attorneys were used to because we do it all the time. We go back there all the time and deal with these guys in terms of that. But it was a wake-up call for them as far as I'm concerned. But what I'm saying is that doing those deposition of those guys, they would testify. They knew everything about the cops. They said these cops would rob them, take their drugs, and sell them to the other gang members in terms of that.
Especially back then. It was probably real
And so what happened is the green leader of them, this is how he got caught. He was on desk duty for doing some type of violation. So while he was on desk duty, he took a company, a government vehicle, FBI set him up. So what they ended up doing, they recruit police officers from the West Side, from a district he didn't know, that to pretend to be drug dealers. So they put him on that this house was a drug dealing house. And so he leaves work, takes a police vehicle, and goes to rob this house.
Right.
Not aware it was under surveillance.
Right.
And not aware that the guy in it was actually a police officer. Beat this cat up. Because this cop was a huge, big guy, like he played football. Beat the cop. So the FBI got him on audio, video, and the whole 9 yards. So it took him and his whole crew down. And these was the same guys that, let our guy die in terms of that. So a lot of that went on back in the day in terms of that. But, you couldn't get as much money on those cases back then because the witnesses, like I said, were former gang members. Now everything is body cameras.
Right.
That's what everybody wanted. Now everything's body cameras. So, but the stuff been going on for years. And think about how bad it was. Just think about it in your mind, how bad this was before cameras.
Yeah.
Think about this in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And what was that case down there? What was it when all those officers beat up that guy, drug him out the car?
In Memphis?
In Memphis.
Yeah.
In Memphis.
And they had body cameras on.
They had body cameras on.
What was they thinking?
I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And when they dragged him, there was a camera on the pole right on that corner. And it makes no sense. But I think that they were empowered. That's one of the reasons, Ben Crump just filed a $500,000 lawsuit. What a lot of people don't know about cases against municipality, they have what are called Monell claims. And Monell claims is when the municipality sanctions, part and parcel, an act by an officers. Remember, Memphis created that special group.
Right.
To target high areas of crime.
Right, because they police, what was she, captain or super?
Yeah.
She was part of that group, wasn't
She's part of that group, right, in terms of that. So that group felt empowered to kind of break laws. That's what I think. They were pulling people over. You heard some of the people who testified, said, hey, I was coming from Chicken, and they told me there was some drugs in my car.
Right.
And then they decided, no, we just messing with you. So they were actually doing that to people. And so that's why they felt empowered. You had to feel empowered if you're going to beat a guy like that in front of a camera on a pole.
And you had cameras
and
on
you
your
had body cameras on.
Yeah.
You can only think you're going to get away with that.
They've done it before.
Because you've done it before. So there's evidence that they've done it before, that there have been complaints made to the city, and the city hasn't done anything. So now, if in fact they have condoned such level of activities, they're going to be liable for what they call Monell claims. And Monell claims can be huge. They can be huge in terms.
So they're going to sue his family going to sue the city.
They sue the city and the police officers.
And the police officers.
That's right. That's the only reason they would sue.
Would that be considered a civil case?
It is a civil case. Wrongful death. It's a
A
wrongful death.
lot of people, when they hear civil rights attorney, they think
Martin Luther
black
King.
struggles.
Right.
But it entails a whole lot more than
Civil
that.
rights entails a whole lot. It entails mainly your civil liberties, not just liberties not against excessive force or violation of your rights and the whole 9 yards, but also equal employment, you know, in terms of that discrimination, avoiding being discrimination on the basis of being a part of a protected activity or protected class, so to speak, a female, gender Pacific, African American, ethnicity, religion, right, or handicap in terms of that. So that's a big area of law that I deal with too, as far as that are concerned too.
So speaking on that, I just got another message, and I got a few checks from Facebook for civil cases or whatever. How does that work? With these firms, I guess they go after these large corporations and they gather other individuals to participate in class action.
Yes. Well, for one, there are different type of cases like that. But let's focus on class action. Class actions are when all the potential plaintiffs have something in common.
Right.
So the class has to be certified by the court. So you got to file a motion to have it certified based upon all the plaintiffs or parties having something in common. And so the court has to make that determination. The defense is going to obviously fight it because the reason they fight it, they want them all to bring individual claims.
Right.
Because a class of people gets to bring all the evidence collectively in one trial. And so naturally the jury is going to think, well, okay, if this happened to 50 people, chances are there's something going on there.
Right.
But if you had to try the case individually by yourself, then people start saying, well, I don't know. That doesn't really mean they did it because you was on the basis of race or sex. Right. In terms of that. And so so typically, for example, in failure to promote, let's say a class action on failure to promote African Americans. So if you say, well, okay, all front level managers, there's about 200 of them. And so, over the years, X amount of people have applied for it. Of those amount of people who applied for it, a certain percentage were minorities, African American, or women. But the majority of Caucasian men have gotten promoted to that position, and another 190 are white males. Right? So everyone who applied for that position is similarly situated.
Right.
We all applied and got turned down, although we might have been qualified. In fact, I had a case one time, y'all not gonna believe this, where I represented a sister who had 20 years of nursing experience and had a master in nursing. She was a supervisor at the time. And she applied for a management position at a hospital. I won't name it. And so a coworker of hers who was in nursing school, didn't even have a bachelor's, and he saw the posting. He sent her an email. He said, hey, they posting for a manager. I'd like to apply for it, but I'm not qualified.
Right.
The posting required a minimum of a Bachelor of Science in nursing, a minimum of 5 years of supervisory experience, right?
Right.
So he contacts the hiring officer who tells him to apply for it. She applied for it. He gets a job and she doesn't.
White male?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We filed a lawsuit, settled in 2 weeks. I mean, think about it. He didn't even fit the qualifications of the posting.
Didn't even have a degree yet.
He didn't have a degree yet. You see, that's the kind of stuff that goes on. They all are not that clean and easy, but, but that's the kind of stuff that goes on, right? In terms of that. So, but it's designed to protect the rights of individuals who are qualified, who've earned the right, to promote and far as they can to be and obtain, because at the end of the day, it's all about money. And so, the higher you go, the more money you make, the money you have available to be able to pay for your kids to go to college, to be able to move in the communities you want to be, understand what all this
quality of life.
Yes, quality of life. That's the end of the game. So, and that's at the end of the day, you want to be able to get, the fair treatment for that. So
let's switch gears a little bit here. So let's talk about the law firm. Where is it located?
Hyde Park.
What's the address?
1507 East 53rd Street on the second floor. Been over there for going on 27 years. We were at 1505 on the second floor, which is part of the same building, just a couple of doors down, right? The Silver Room now has that office we used to have.
So it's a Darryl E. Robinson and Associates. So that means you the boss.
Yeah, Darryl E. Robinson and Associates. When I first started at 1505, we were London Robinson and Best.
Right.
And when we split up, I had Darryl E. Robinson PC, and several years ago, I turned it to Darryl E. Robinson and Associates.
How many associates?
That's just really one and an office manager. That's
okay. Let me ask you this. We had one of my other buddies on. He's a principal at King High School.
Okay.
And we asked him, what does it mean to be a good leader? And we asked you the same question. What does it mean to be a great leader?
Well, there are a number of things it means to be a good leader. First and foremost, it's to lead by example. I never ask someone to do something you wouldn't do. You want to lead by example. Be compassionate, because at the end of the day, people are human. They have issues, just like everybody else. For example, family issues, emotional issues, and as far as that are concerned. And be flexible in terms of that. Although I am a hardworking person and I'm pretty much regimented, I don't necessarily treat people that way.
Right.
My focus is as long as we can get the job done, that I'm flexible on anything else. Right. As far as that is concerned, because the customer is first. We got to make sure we satisfy and meet the customer needs as far as that is concerned. But there's a lot of ways of doing that in terms of that. And my office manager is really good. I mean, she takes phone calls on weekends, and she's a hustler. She knows how to go out and get that money.
Right.
Hey, I think you want to call this person.
Yeah.
Knows how to screen calls and stuff like that. And there's another attorney that works in the office, Heather Wardell. She does primarily criminal work. So office manager handle both of our calls. We come through the same number as far as that is concerned. So, I mean, you just got to be flexible, particularly now in this day and age. I mean, the whole pandemic changed everything.
Yeah.
So it changed it. And I always have that debate with fellow attorneys who just kind of more rigid and kind of refuse, want people in the office. That's
stern.
Stern, right? Paradigm shifts. They can't get with the paradigm shift. You learn that in corporate America about paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why corporate America try to push out a lot of older people, because they're not, for all that paradigm shift. But you need to. You got to flow in terms of, especially if you want to be good with business.
You got to adapt with it.
You got to adapt with it. Yes. And then and I know one who has a difficult time too hiring younger lawyers because of that too. They want to work from Starbucks.
Right.
I don't really care where you work from. Get the work done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. That's it.
Now, is there a common myth that you would like to debunk when it comes to attorneys?
Let's see. There's a lot of jokes about lawyers, and all lawyers are liars and stuff like that.
Scam artists.
Scam artists and all that. Yeah, that's not true.
Right.
There are a lot of us that are like that. I pride myself on being different, but that's because of the way I was raised. Right. I was brought up in a Christian family, always saying that having moral values is a detriment to be a lawyer. Right. Because think about it. So for what happens is this. White don't like this because if you don't want to know, don't ask me a question.
Right.
If you don't want to know the answer, I'm brutally truthful. Right. And that doesn't always go off well.
Right.
Right. In terms of that. But for a lot of people, they like to know where you're coming from. Right. And so there are clients that come in your office with a case, and in terms of that, and I tell them the truth about the potential of their case from a financial standpoint and whether or not we could win. Right.
Is this before they pay the fee or after they pay the fee?
Before.
Oh, okay.
Before they pay the fee. Before they pay the fee.
Right.
Yeah, I do it over the phone.
Right.
In terms of that. And so, but there are lawyers who will tell you, I can get you $400,000 on a case that ain't worth 20 to get you to sign up. Or to get them to pay the fee, I guarantee I'm going to get a not guilty. I would never tell you that. I won't do it. And then I have taken cases that other lawyers had that told clients that I had a case once where older woman owned the building in a soul food restaurant on the first level. In terms of that, the building went in foreclosure, and this is how foreclosure works. When it's in foreclosure and they get a judgment of foreclosure and the building's sold at a foreclosure sale, the judge will give you 30 days to move out.
Right.
So the new owner of the property can't move on the building until the 30-day lapses, as far as that is concerned. In that particular case, they moved too early.
Right.
A lot like the city demolished that other building too early. So what happens is they took all her equipment in there and got rid of it. Under Illinois law, that's considered conversion. So you can file a lawsuit of conversion based to recover the useful value of the equipment. You can't get paid for it brand new, but what it would have been. So we got to have some receipts and the whole nine yards. So she went and hired a lawyer. The lawyer told her she was going to get $400,000, right? So that didn't work out. When she ended up coming to me, I said, well, give me receipts concerning everything you had up in there. I said, first of all, did you buy a brand? She said, well, I don't have receipts. She said, everything was stored in there because of, and then when they took it, I don't have access to the receipt. Well, so if you bought it brand new, did you use credit cards or checks or whatever? She said, no, I didn't buy it brand new. I bought it used. Well, okay. How did you buy it?
Right.
Well, bought it off the back of a truck.
So she ain't had nothing.
You ain't had nothing. Well, I mean, okay. First of all, it's not used. Listen, when we look some stuff up on the internet. So I said, brand new, it's not worth $400,000. So used.
So she came to you thinking that with that same ideology
exactly,
from the last
right.
lawyer.
I said, I don't know why she even told you that.
He created the
now, I
false
can understand, for example, if the business was still operational in terms of that, and they, for example, moved after day 15 and she had lost revenue for 15 days, we can include all that in there.
Right.
I understand that. And so it is those false pretenses that, unfortunately, lawyers will tell you that. A guy called me recently the other day about, he had a person, he was at Cook County Jail, had his head hit against a hard thing by a sheriff, and got a split in his head, and a firm hired him, told him he was going to get $200,000. And so he fell out with the firm. You know, the state's attorney ain't going to pay $200,000. He went from $200,000 down to $20,000. He fell out, because now his case wasn't worth it. They started to treat him like dirt. Then he ended up severing the relationship. And he called me and said, look, because he's in court, the judge said you got to get a lawyer in 30 days. It's in federal court. I said, well, the good news is you got a claim. The bad news is too low for me to take. You know? So, and I said, hey, he said, look, I'll just take $10,000. I said, but it's not worth me getting involved. I understand. You should have stayed with those guys and settled it out. I said, it was unfortunate. They should have never told you it was worth that much in the first place.
Right.
Because he didn't have that much damage. It was unrealistic expectations. And the problem with unrealistic expectation is that'll come back on the attorney.
Right.
One case I'll tell you I turned down. This was a really important case. And remember that cemetery out in the south suburbs?
Yeah, Burrow
Cemetery, right? We had gotten clients that called us about their loved ones being lost. So we collected a number of cases. We were going to sue Burrow. Burrow filed for bankruptcy. So before he went to the bench, I went to John. I said, nope, let's call these people back and get rid of these cases. I said, because this is what's going to happen. Because I had represented defendants, creditors in bankruptcy court. I said, so Burrow only has a certain amount of money. Now you got a lot of claims. So what the trustee in bankruptcy court can do, he said, hey, he can negotiate with you. And if you can't come to an agreement, guess what? He's going to say, this is what you get.
Right.
I said, so the only people who are going to win in this case are going to be lawyers.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it was about $2 million on the table. There were like hundreds of claimants.
Right.
So the lawyer's going to file a fee, and everybody's going to end up with $200 a piece. So imagine what your client is going to think of you at the end of the day.
And so you mentioned, that you handled some entertainment law as well.
Absolutely.
Right. Can you share some of those experiences?
Yeah, I have. I'll tell you how I initially got involved in the entertainment game. And so when I was a young lawyer, I don't know if you all recall, they used to have a music festival downtown. Not necessarily, it was like a workshop.
Right.
I think Steve Harvey used to be involved with it. He has a workshop down there. So I went down there one time and just try to figure out what it was about, learn something about the music game, maybe make some particular contacts. And so that's when we were just London Robinson Best had stopped being a firm. And I left some cards down there. So this guy called me.
Right.
And he was a music producer. And he called me because a director was directing a film and wanted him to create a soundtrack. Right, as far as that is concerned. So I had no experience in marrying the two at that time. And so, and prior to then, I had some clients who were trying to get me to go to African American Black Film Festival. At that time, it was called the Acapulco Film Festival. I had no interest in film at all.
Right.
So I would never go. I was like, I go for what? He said, you'll learn a lot. You want to go. So I never thought about going until this music producer called me. And so what happened is that he wanted to, the director of the film wanted to hire him to produce a soundtrack for that movie, pay him a flat fee, and keep the rights to his music. Now, I didn't know enough to know whether or not that was okay, but it didn't sound okay.
Right.
You want to own everything.
Exactly. I said, that doesn't sound right. Right. Yeah. And so I was like, no, we're not giving him the rights to the music.
Right.
You know, he can pay us to do the soundtrack. We're not giving him the rights to the music. So subsequently from there, I ended up going to the film festival, and at the film first and the seminars, I learned that my hunch was correct. And most film directors have no interest in the rights to your music at all.
Right.
They use your music as a way of selling the, licensing, right? And selling the film, and if you got a good hook or whatever in the background, it just makes the moments in the film, give people that experience, particularly back then it was in the theater, right? So as far as that is concerned. So that's how I got my foray into that. And then that brought me into the film industry, and I started going to the film festival, and I still go. I'm going again this year, trying to go one of these years and enter into
it was the pandemic.
And enter into one of the particularly the short film terms of that. And I think the hurdle to get into it today is a lot easier than it was before. And the reason I'll say that is this, because of streaming.
Right.
There's a demand for content. There is a constant demand for content because content streams 24 hours a day.
Right.
And so you got to have it, otherwise you lose your audience in terms of that. But what happens when you have that big of a demand for content and content coming in that fast, the quality goes down in some cases.
Right.
So I've seen his work, and I've seen a lot of other work, and I was like, he can get in this game pretty easy. And so they're begging for people to bring content, particularly quality content, as far as that is concerned. And so, but back to the music industry, that's how I got into it. And so after we started, as I started practicing law again, and when John came in, the ex-law partner, Roger Best, came back and wanted to start in entertainment. So we created an entertainment company called Black Diamond Entertainment.
Black Diamond.
And so Black Diamond Entertainment was supposed to be a management company where we would manage artists, right? So we were brought in by people, there was like 5 of us in terms of that. And Roger was in business with 3 or 4 other guys. And then John, who was my partner at the time, we decided to get into it and invest into it and invest in these artists. And we would promote the money up front. Like, for example, I was responsible for handling all the contracts for Black Diamond Entertainment.
Right.
Signing the artists. And everybody had their role, right, in terms of that. One of the guys was responsible for getting the music to the radio station and getting them to play it. And so we would promote we would put on shows. We would pay for, for the venue. We rented the venue out at Navy Pier one time. Now, they used to have an outdoor theater. I don't know if you remember that. That was really nice in terms of that. And we would sign in artists. And then we would have, as the headliner of the shows, established artists already.
Right.
People who were from Chicago, well known in terms of that. We would pay them to come and perform in terms of that. And we started out doing really well. The reason the group broke up is because then that's one of the things you need to learn about business.
Right.
Is that if you have people who are partners or members of an operating agreement or an LLC that you can't trust, you're not going to be able to do business together. So you find out that people were taking money, and then it falls apart after that, right? And so that's always tough. That's why I've never sought to have a partner after a couple of those experiences in terms of that. And it didn't. I had suspicions about it from Black Diamond Entertainment, but it didn't start there. The other individuals who were members of Black Diamond had a real estate business together. That's where the corruption took place. So when their partnership fell apart, naturally, because they were part of us, it cascaded.
Yeah.
Right, cascade down. But then that did start me to question all the money we put in, where was it going?
All brothers or?
Right, all brothers, yeah. Where was it going in terms of that? So you got to have, people who are honest. And that's a tough thing to do, right? As far as that is concerned. And because we would have made a ton of money if we had kept that together.
I can imagine.
We would have made a ton of money. But, we had a lot of momentum. Yeah, we had a lot of momentum. We had artists that were on the radio and doing jingles for McDonald's and, just creating a buzz.
Right.
In terms of that. And so, I like to talk about that too, not just about artists, because I think the movement is different. Not just about artists trying to get a contract, because now artists, the barrier to get into the game is just put your stuff online.
Right.
Right. But you don't make a lot of money, but downstreaming is most artists today make their money and merchandise, licensing, you know what I'm saying? Things like that, and tours.
Right.
But they should focus on a brand. That's how you make the real money. You want to develop yourself and create a brand as far as that is concerned. And so the businesses now are built around brands. That's why you see some of the athletes and some of the entertainers becoming billionaires, because they're becoming a brand.
Like LeBron.
Right.
Exactly. They're using their fame to develop a brand.
Right.
And so you can venture off into different areas where you can make a lot more money as far as that is concerned. And licensing is a lot of revenue in that, because like I go back before to the content. Content is growing. You have never seen a documentary, a movie, anything, a commercial without music in the background.
Yeah, that's true.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So if you can get your songs on some of those things, I was talking to someone about a song. I don't know how old it is. My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
Yeah, Khalees.
You seen that commercial?
Yeah.
You know how old that song is? She getting paid every time they play
It's
it.
20 years old.
That's right.
Hopefully she getting paid and not somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, hope she didn't screw the
Pharrell
contract
getting
up,
paid,
right.
So let's talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit. What are some of the downfalls that an artist goes through when they deal with these contracts and they don't have the knowledge
Well,
to sit down and make sure
back in the
everything
day,
is right?
obviously, they were giving up their rights to the music. They don't
Right.
do that anymore, thank God. And the biggest downfall, I think, would be if they get into contracts that are too long, right? In terms of that, one of the ones I dealt with in the reality business is one of the things and that was a hard negotiation, because I'm just a hard negotiator when it comes to that standpoint in terms of that. So in the reality business, they do it in terms of seasons, right? So many episodes mean a season, but it's not like football, baseball was once a year. You can have 4 seasons in a year.
Right.
In terms of that. But the second, third seasons are optional seasons based upon how well the first season do, right? So people say, well, what do you mean by how well the first season do? So a reality show is no different than TV. The revenue is generated based upon advertising.
Right.
So if you got viewership, you know, they got people who willing to advertise on it. That's why you get these folks, got these TikToks making all this money.
Yeah.
In terms of that, once their viewership numbers go up, you have a company that'll call them like a GM and say, hey, look, I like to advertise my cars on your website. I'll pay you $10,000 a month.
Right.
And so that's why they make so much money.
Well, that's what we had.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's no different than, you know, what they were doing in terms of streaming as far as the season is concerned. The potential drawback is, and I always advise my clients get against it, but some of them never listen. If they lock you in, because what they'll do is that you do that first season, it may not do as well, or it could do as well, and then they may get taken over, and then all of a sudden they don't want to produce the next season, but they have the rights to your story.
Right.
So they still can shut you out.
They can shut you out. So you're not making any money.
Right.
In terms of that. And so, you know, I always see that coming, and I don't advise for it in terms of that. That becomes a sticking point between us and them. And typically, if you have a client and it's their first foray into that type of thing, they'll eventually say, no, go ahead and do it.
They signing it for big money, though. I mean, they signing over their rights and they getting paid for that.
Yeah, they sign over their rights and they get paid.
So you would
for it.
advise them, don't take the money, don't sign over your right.
No, well, don't sign over your right in terms of, in terms of their content. Well, anything that's created while they're under contract belongs to the.
Right.
That's how you do it in terms of that. So we had some situations where she had created content and I ended up keeping that out of the contractual rights. That's one thing. Now, what I'm talking about is that if you have a show that's successful and who you sign a contract with decided not to produce the second season for whatever reason, but because they have rights to the show for a period of time, you see what I'm saying? You sit around not doing anything and you can't shop the show to someone who's interested in it.
Right. So that's like the Dave Chappelle.
Exactly. And that becomes a problem.
They still try to do his show with his name and he wasn't involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's one of those deals. So so that becomes a problem, right? As far as that is concerned.
How can you combat that?
Well, one of the things you can do is that it's two different ways, right? If you're a new artist, it's about leverage, right?
Right.
If you're an established artist, you make the rules you want. It's just like an athlete having an opt-out clause. Established artists, they get to call the shots.
Right.
Right. If this doesn't work out, I'll give you 30-day notice and I'm gone.
Right.
Right. But new artists, they're more hungry. And this is their first foray into the business. They're usually going to get the shaft. I hate to say that word, but I don't recommend it as an attorney because I have to advise against it because it's in my best interest, but they're kind of thirsty and they're going to go for it as far as that concerned. It doesn't happen in all cases, but I've seen it happen. And even when the shows were good,
right.
But it wasn't that the company wasn't willing to pick it up. Sometimes they get bought out.
Right.
And then the new people come in, they want to go a different direction.
Yeah, Disney buy you, and now
Exactly.
yeah.
And then they said, well, we want to put the money into this show over here, this person over here versus we're gonna put you on the shelf though. It's like that's what it is. They put you on the shelf.
Right.
And so so you get clients who get kind of upset about that, and understandably so, right? So that's how that works in terms of that. But get your brand.
Right.
In any event, get your brand, establish your brand, establish some content and creation before you sign. That way, if things go south, like for example with a reality show, you can still maneuver in other directions with that content that's not unique to that.
Right.
And your brand allows you to do that. Make money from merchandise and make money from licensing.
But you got to have some upfront money. You got to spend some money to really get your brand established.
Well, not necessarily. The internet makes it cheaper, right? Now, the internet is based on algorithms, right? So,
Right.
for example, when you download music and the more it's downloaded, the more algorithms send out to recommend that music. Then you always have these songs and stuff pop up on your phone.
Right.
I get all that kind of content. It's the same way as far as that is concerned. It's not like before where you had to advertise to get albums sold in terms of that. And they call it SEO too. So you can have pay people
Right.
to put that stuff out there.
Search engine.
Yeah,
optimization.
yeah. You can pay people to do that. And it's not just unique to the music business, any kind of business.
Right.
You can do that. And so that's very popular in terms of they can make sure that when there are Google searches, you show up at the top. That stuff is real in terms of that. And lawyers of all people use it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really big on that in terms of that. In fact, the game of law is becoming more business than a practice. The people that do a lot of advertising, they don't practice law at all. All they do is
Advertise.
they advertise. They
Yeah.
advertise and then send the cases to somebody else.
Yeah. What's the 2222
Yeah,
guy?
exactly.
I was
right.
in Las Vegas. He had a billboard up there. I'm like, man, I see this dude.
And there's a lot
Absolutely.
of lawyers with podcasts
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
giving out,
Yep.
talking about cases and legal advice
Absolutely.
and things
That's
of that
what they do.
nature.
They refer
Like the
them.
RICO thing. Let's talk about that
Let's
a
talk
little
about
bit.
the RICO case. This is interesting. And because I do entertainment on the one side and also did criminal work, particularly in federal court. So for people who understand what the RICO Act was created around 1970, primarily for organized crime via the mafia, right? In terms of that. Gangs started to become more involved in organized crime, I would say, during the advent of the crack cocaine. Didn't it? Because it started building empires. You had money to build an empire in the crack game in terms of that. So what the feds do is they use the RICO Act to ensnare a wider range of people because the RICO Act is used to prosecute people under the auspices that they are participating in a criminal enterprise. So I may not catch you committing a murder, but I know you're a part of this gang that commit murders,
Right.
selling drugs, strong arm robberies, carjackings, loan fraud, money laundering, as far as that is concerned. So that's what they use for RICO purposes in terms of that. And so the head guy who said, hey, I didn't kill anybody, but he passing orders down,
Right.
right? In terms
But you
of
need
that.
somebody to rat him out.
Exactly. But typically they'll, lower level informant, offer him a deal,
Right.
and a lesser sentence in terms of that, and to rat him out as far as that is concerned. And so that's how help establish. But so it allows, not only RICO involves criminal but civil offenses too. I mean, civil charges where you
I
can
didn't
pay
know that.
money.
Right.
Now, in terms of the YSL, that's what you wanted to talk about, and using lyrics to establish criminal enterprise. So what the prosecution wanted to do is introduce social media posts, images by the group, and rap lyrics to establish or authenticate that they are actually engaged in criminal enterprise on behalf of the gang that they have in the lyrics. This is the problem I have with this.
Right.
But before that, I'm going to say this. If you never understood why it was important to have diversity on the bench, this case should open your eyes. This case should open your eyes. So think about rap lyrics and what rap lyrics are based upon.
Right.
If you're from the African American community, what I'm going to call the coolness in the African American community is determined by the collective. And the collective include gang members. Gang members don't gang bang all day. They are
Right.
a part of our community. They go to school, they go to church, they got jobs in terms of that. So think about the African American
to church.
coolness. And they do.
Yeah.
They do.
I know a couple of
That's
bangers
right.
that went to church.
They do. And so think about so if you're going to use rap, see the whole argument against using the rap lyrics is based upon discrimination and racist as far as I'm concerned. The reason it's important, I'm going to give you one primary example for when I came up. When I came up, the gangs were primarily three: the Stones, the Vice Lords, and the Disciples. And I don't know if you remember this, but when you wore a baseball cap to the right or the left, determined which gang you were in.
That was a representation.
A representation in terms of that. But people still wear baseball caps to the right and the left. It defines coolness in the African American community.
Especially in different cities.
Especially in different cities in terms of that. So if you allow to use the rap lyrics, which is expression of lyrics or expression of literature, you can ensnare a lot of innocent people because people do those things to be cool and have nothing to do with gang.
It's a lot of embellishment.
It's a lot of embellishment.
In the rap lyrics.
Right. You got rappers want to be gangbangers want to be rappers.
Because that's like Gunna, the other guy that was with her. He wasn't really.
Exactly.
But in his lyrics, he talked about those things.
His lyrics talks about it.
And it's entertainment. So can they, that's actually legal that they can go and take the lyrics and say, okay, since you did this and lyrically or whatever, we're going to use this against you. Can you do that?
They can't necessarily do it. So let me tell you how it's done, right? So what happens is you get ready to go to trial.
Right.
And so the defense attorney will either file a motion before trial called a motion in limine, or the state's attorney is going to file it before trial to get it admitted. You can file a motion in limine to get something barred or a motion in limine to get something admitted. So the judge has to weigh what we call the probative value of allowing that evidence in versus the prejudice against the defendants.
Right.
That's where it becomes important, because if you have an African-American judge like me that come from K-Town, that's born on the South Side, that was raised around disciples, if you present something like that in my courtroom and say, hey, I want to use this to authenticate that these defendants are involved in the gang, I'm going to say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? When I leave the courtroom, I'm turn my head to the side.
Right. And turn this up.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but, and the reason you don't want to allow that in, because you may not have a jury of your peers. So automatically, you got people who are going to stereotype you based upon information that is a creative art.
And those lyrics are graphic.
And the lyrics are graphic.
You hear it in the courtroom and you white.
Exactly.
Right.
It sounds like they didn't win and shot up everybody on the block.
Exactly. Right.
Like, yeah, they did it.
So that's the danger of it. And so what's going to have to happen is that you're going to have some judges who are going to let it in, some who are not. And then the attorney doing the trials, once it's being presented, he have to make an objection. So the objection is overruled. He's preserving his right for appeal when he makes that objection. And even though the judge is going to allow it in at the beginning of the trial, still you have to object when they present it. A lot of people don't know that. That's called preserving your right on appeal. Then it's going to go to the appellate court, and the appellate court is going to determine whether or not that information was too prejudicial and it shouldn't have been allowed in. And ultimately, it's going to end up in state Supreme Court.
It's still in trial right now. That's why I say, okay.
Yeah, it is. It's still in trial.
In your professional opinion, can he beat it?
I haven't been following that close, so I can't tell you that. And I have not been following that close. But they got other evidence against him. Remember this brought on Rico case? They got other evidence.
They got a whole bunch of people that they took in.
They got a whole bunch of people who turn in. And so it depends on what evidence they particularly have against them as far as that are concerned. So I haven't been following that close to know what particular evidence they have actually against them and who is willing to testify.
I think they got phone taps. They got
and what about, And so as a judge, that's my position. Like, if you got a good case, keep the lyrics out.
Right. You don't need them.
We don't need them.
Right. Like, and that's the key. You said, if you have a good case.
Right, exactly. We call that piling on.
Right.
So we don't need the lyrics. So keep that information out. So that's what makes it interesting. In the music industry, obviously, and the movie industry going to be next, because videos really is synonymous with lyrics. Because in the videos, they're showing people with guns. A lot of that's prop guns.
Right.
Showing people with guns and doing certain things as far as that are concerned. And not only that, so what happens if you have an extra who just want to be on TV?
Right.
That's in the video with a gun, talking with those kind of lyrics. They don't even know, don't know how to spell gang. So do they get charged too as a part of the RICO?
Right.
You see the risk in that?
Right.
They pick you up,
Yeah, you see that risk?
It snares a lot of people.
It spreads too wide of a net. But that's what the prosecution want to do. They don't care as far as that is concerned. But then again, they don't care because the community is minority community.
And the young black,
if they were snaring a whole bunch of non-minorities, there'd be an uproar about that.
Yeah.
Right? There'd be an uproar about it.
Now, what about what's his name? Jonathan Majors? Is that the actor that just was in
from Creed?
Creed.
Yeah.
That case with him with well, he ain't got a case yet, but him being like what they call it, canceled.
Right. I guess when you do something against what the
Right.
status
Well, he was
status quo. What was the case?
His girl called the police on him. No,
Oh,
he
yes.
called police on his girl.
Right.
That she was doing something, and then she went through his phone, and he supposed to allegedly hit her. But when the police got there, they took him in, but he the one they called.
Right.
And now he been taken off the commercials and all of that kind of stuff, and he ain't been charged with nothing.
No, he hasn't in terms of that.
But it's bad press.
It's bad press. Unfortunately, in situations like that, and some departments have a policy too. Like, for example, the domestic incident, when they arrive on the scene, they got to take somebody away. Usually it's going to be the man.
Right.
In terms of that. But that's bad press for anybody who's in the industry, right? And so that's just bad press, even when it comes
Whether
to
he
athletes.
did it or not.
Because they have this clause they have it, a bad conduct clause.
Right.
They have it in their contracts. Athletes have it in their contracts.
Right.
As far as they're concerned. Remember the football player charged with all those rapes? He settled those cases.
Yeah,
Deshaun Watson, as far as that are concerned. So, I mean, bad conduct clause.
Yeah.
But he never got prosecuted. They never indicted him for any of those.
So in a case like that, would it be wise to call your lawyer first, then the police?
Well, yeah. I mean, you mean he
in his case?
Yeah.
Because he has a lot going for himself. He was
on the come up.
Right. Yeah.
You absolutely call your lawyer first because you want to make sure that he doesn't say the wrong thing when the police arrive on the scene.
Right.
So as far as
Do people talk too much when they talk to the police?
Some people do. Yeah, some people do. I've seen people who gotten indicted by the feds but never got indicted. They kept their mouth shut. I've had people. I represented people who was guilty as heck and didn't get indicted because they didn't say anything.
Right.
And so, I always tell people, I said, it's best to say nothing, do nothing, say nothing.
Right.
In terms of that, let them prove their case. Because they got the burden of proof on you, right? In terms of that. And so some people think, because what they do, what the feds would do is that they'll manipulate you.
Right.
They'll say, hey, if you tell us, we may use you as a witness. Let us know what's going on. We'll do this. You never come to an agreement with the feds on anything like that without having a lawyer there.
Right.
Because you got to get it in right.
They can tell you anything.
They can tell you anything.
But a lot of people still go and do it.
Yeah, they can tell you anything. They can tell you anything. There's a case that the lawyer in my office handled involving a guy. They got it thrown out, got his confession thrown out. He was locked up. They hold you for 48 hours and the police was coming in the room and they would ask him questions about a murder.
Right.
In terms of that. He was like, I think I need a lawyer. I think I need a lawyer. No, you got to talk to a lawyer. So, okay, since you asked for a lawyer, we can't talk to you anymore. And so the day went on, they kept him set up in there and then they come back and say, hey, I think your guy, he might have copped a plea, and then they play the game with him.
They try to trick him.
Right. Then he said, what did he do? What did he say? Well, you said you want a lawyer, so we can't tell you.
Right.
That's the game they played with him, right? They scared him in terms of that. And so they kept going through that little routine, and he eventually ended up saying something, right? So they used that against him at trial. He was found guilty. It was appealed. And you know what the appellate court say? No way. Once he said he needed a lawyer, all conversation was supposed to stop and cease from here on out.
So they made the mistake coming back in there.
Yep, that's what the appellate court said. You cannot, so any fruits of an unlawful had to be thrown out. So don't do that again. Right. So now it's case law. Yeah, let them go.
So I just recently graduated from law school, passed the bar, getting ready to start my journey. Of course, not myself.
I understand. I got
you. So you paint a scenario,
right? What advice would you give to that youngster or that person?
Well, it depends on what area of law they were interested in. But what I think needs to happen, that didn't happen when I was a young lawyer, and unfortunately it doesn't happen enough today, was when we came out and we started a law firm, we looked for older lawyers to be our mentors. They wouldn't mentor us, though. They said that we were their competition. They wouldn't mentor us. And that's a mistake. Let me tell you why that's a mistake. I don't do that when it comes to young lawyers. I tell them, I reach out to them, you need anything, I can help you out the whole thing out. That's a mistake. For one, you want to help develop the next generation of lawyers. Two, that can be business for you, because what happens is that I had gotten business. I remember I got a wrongful death case when I was a real young lawyer. I didn't even know how to handle it. So I turned it down. So I could have brought in an experienced lawyer and we could have split it.
Right.
Right. So you lose out on money. So as a result of me mentoring young lawyers, I have been brought in so many cases that they couldn't handle.
Right.
So I want to make sure they get paid and I get paid too at the same time. So I've developed a relationship by mentoring these young lawyers in terms of that. There's one young lawyer now that doesn't practice law that's into real estate development.
Right.
So, and as a result of me mentoring him in the practice of law, I do all his real estate development legal work, right? So you want to establish a relationship. You can create a pool of referrals as a result of mentoring these young lawyers.
Right.
They don't necessarily have to be a competition. I've always been of the mindset that there's enough money out there for everybody to make in terms of that. And so I've tried to encourage the young lawyers to do what we couldn't do, like kind of work together.
Right.
But our community still is divided. There's
That's
still a lot of jealousy or hatred or envy, however you may be, driven by social media, I think.
Yeah,
They don't want to work together and help each other grow.
Right.
They're competing.
Right.
Instead of
It's
working
put in
together.
your face every day.
Yes.
You know? Right.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. I try to talk to him. I says, what beef you have against that other brother, another lawyer? I said, because he's doing well, y'all both doing well. Why don't y'all partner up? But he want to do better than the other one.
I got like a deep theory about that as far as our culture. I think it go way, way back. We always want to compete with each other. We always want more because we're a flashy culture.
Right.
So we got to show it.
Right.
We got to boast and brag.
Right.
And that affects us all the way to this day and even in every field that we in.
Right. It does. It does. And so that's unfortunate. But that's what I would, if he can get a mentor,
Right.
To she or him to help them out, that would be good. Depending on what area they want to go to, if they can get the requisite experience, if it's in criminal, if they really want to do criminal law in terms of that and they have the right qualifications, there's nothing wrong with starting at the prosecution office. A lot of prosecutors, my former partner who was a defense attorney for years was a prosecutor before he became a defense attorney. And we do need some diversity in the prosecution office because we want somebody to look at the case with an open eye, right? In terms of, so we do need that too. Do defense work. If they want to do civil litigation, go work at the smaller PI firms and learn the ropes, right? In terms of a lot of work, but you don't went to law school and paid all that money.
Right.
Might as well.
Get a return on your investment. That's what I say.
No, absolutely.
So
we got a couple more questions. So what makes a good lawyer in your eye?
There are a number of things that makes a good lawyer. One, in my opinion, one of the things is I think honesty does make a good lawyer as far as I'm concerned. I think hard work makes a good lawyer. I don't think you necessarily have to be the smartest person. You got to be willing to work hard. You got to be compassionate to your client. You got to be a good listener. And you got to be a good storyteller in terms of that. So I was never usually a good storyteller because transition from engineering to law is a whole different type of personality, right? So I kind of grew up rigid and being in the field of engineering required a whole lot of discipline in terms of that. And so becoming a lawyer really helped me become an outward personality. And so I had law professors who always told good stories. And the best lawyers are lawyers who tell good stories. And so not only do you have to have good stories, you got to be able to laugh at yourself.
Right.
That's synonymous with being able to tell a good story. And so over the years, I've learned to be able to do that. I still struggle from once in a while because of my what I call dual personality.
Right.
But that's important to being a lawyer. Be able to tell a good story because you captures people's ear, particularly if you're doing a trial.
Right.
When you can tell a good story in terms of that. And so they'll listen, and then when they listen, they're more inclined to value the evidence that you put in far as and to be genuine.
Right.
To be genuine as far as the trial is concerned. No, I see lawyers who try to insult the jury intelligence. Don't do that.
Right.
They'll punish you for that one.
Yeah.
They'll punish you for that one. And so you never try to insult people's intelligence. I think that's just what works for me, honesty, valuing what input that people have, whether they're client or the jury in terms of that. And so being tenacious when you have to be. Some lawyers think it's cool to be real nice, or some lawyers think it's cool to be obnoxious as far as they're concerned. I like the nice route until you make me go there.
Right.
Right.
You have to impose your will a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Then I have to, and I've done that on a couple of occasions in terms of that. And so, and then, we have our own struggles as African-American lawyers when we're dealing with non-African-American lawyers sometimes, right? So, how that goes. But, so, it's one of those things.
So was that a conscious choice, just kind of going back a little bit more, to put the law firm in Hyde Park of all neighborhoods?
Wasn't my choice. Right. But like I say, I acquiesced because one side of the city versus the other, I really had no idea at that time.
Right.
So I got to give Ted London all the credit And Hyde Park at that time wasn't as developed as it is now.
Right.
He just thought it would be a good area. From a cost standpoint, it was affordable. Wasn't like being downtown. He thought being a neighborhood lawyer has its merits because people want neighborhood lawyers. They don't want to go downtown. They're kind of afraid, people from my community. And so that does have its value.
Right.
I'm glad I did because of how Hyde Park has developed. Easy access to restaurants and different things like that, not far from where I live now. And it's a good community. And yeah, it gets busy over there and people do complain about parking, but it's cheaper to park and it's not as crowded as downtown. So what's the alternative, right? So,
Right.
but I'm glad.
So, I'm gonna send you out on this one. If you had to do it again, and if you go back and you had to make that decision again, would you be a lawyer?
No, I wouldn't.
Really?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be a lawyer or engineer if I had to do it over again.
What would you do?
I would do finance. I would be an investment banker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It amazes me, and I would do it because of the finance. It amazes me how much money investment bankers make and invest in other people's money. And I do a lot of investments. That's the only reason I say that. I've made a lot of money off investments. I got a lot of investments in terms of that. And what I know about investments, and I sought to learn about investments as a young man because of my pursuit toward financial independence. I was one of the type of individuals, and still am that way today, is that I would always pay myself first.
Right.
And so savings was one part of it, but I wanted to learn how to invest. And so after hours, after I practiced law, I would go, I don't know if you recall, there used to be a Borders bookstore on the corner where Curious.
Yeah.
I would go to the Borders bookstore and read Forbes magazine, Business Week, all those for free every week. And whenever the monthly or weekly subscription, to learn how to invest, to read stories. They always feature people in there and their stories about how they gain their money. I'm not talking about Buffett type people. I'm just talking about regular millionaires. And so from that, I opened an account with E-Trade. That was my very first brokerage account. I opened an account online with E-Trade. And my very first stock I bought was satellite radio.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I got into satellite radio early on. And so, and back in those days, E-Trade was headquartered down on Wacker Street. And so they would have free seminars in the evening. And so for you to come down there and learn about investing, what they were really trying to do was get you to sign you up so you can use one of their brokers. So I would sign up just to go get the information.
Right.
And so I would use that to supplement the stuff that I was reading about. And so like anything, I just got smarter and smarter at it and more informed at it. So I help a lot of my friends and colleagues now when they ask me about what to invest in, I give them information. So that's what I would do.
We're going to bring you back and we're going to have another segment on financial freedom.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that, but yes, do that. Absolutely. Yeah, in terms of that. Because that, to me, is the next step. Once you become successful in any endeavor, even as a brand and an artist, you know what I mean? You got to plan for financial success afterwards in terms of that. Pay it forward by paying yourself for it. Not only pay it forward with other individuals, but pay yourself for it. Plan for financial independence to generate perpetual wealth.
Absolutely.
That's what they need too. So,
and that's a lovely note to leave off on. And I'm going to say myself to continue to invest in yourself via the time, the education, the financial. It's never too late, and I'm going to go back to you. It's never too late.
That's right. It's never too late. That might be my next career.
Yeah. Hey, let's make it happen.
All right.
And we can say the Survival of the Fittest podcast played a role in that,
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So as always, this is a product for the people, by the people, where dreams go further than bullets. We out. Peace.
Please don't give up now. Please don't give up.